It was one of those fancy restaurants with white tablecloths so sharp they could cut paper, a wine list that was more expensive than my monthly food budget, and court-floor toe-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor that Margaret enjoyed holding. When we arrived, the hostess had certainly seen Emma's thrift shop jacket and my off-season outfit, and gave us that practice grin that didn't quite reach her eyes. She carefully picked a location that I was familiar with. When Margaret intended to highlight the difference between achievement and what she referred to as settling for less, she always did. Emma, my 13-year-old daughter who was already experiencing the agonizing adolescent knowledge of social hierarchies, and I had come early. During the journey there, she had asked me 3 times whether her jacket was all right, once in the elevator and once when we were parked. She had adored it when we discovered it. It was a navy blue item with silver buttons from a thrift shop, spotless and flawless. However, I could see that she was beginning to shrink into herself next to her cousin's fancy things, her shoulders folding inward as children do when they want to take up less room. Margaret, her husband David, and their 2 children, Trevor and Madison, arrived 20 minutes late. They were both in their early 20s and had automobiles that cost more than I had earned in the previous 2 years put together. Within the first 5 minutes of sitting down, they ensured that everyone understood it. How individuals behave when their identity is mostly derived on their material belongings. Margaret apologized for being late, but she didn't seem apologetic at all. Her Chanel purse deliberately thudded on the table. Madison had to choose between the Mercedes and the BMW. First world issues, correct. However, I guess not everyone has to make those types of choices. Madison tossed her expertly highlighted hair and giggled. The type of highlights that a hairdresser would charge $300 for. The Beamer was my choice. The Mercedes seemed rather ostentatious. I like to keep things subtle. I saw Emma reach for the hem of her jacket and touch the material between her fingers. That little gesture almost shattered me, but I maintained a neutral expression. That was a talent I had acquired during many years of family get-togethers. Margaret leaned over to give my daughter a quick peck on the cheek. "Emma, sweetie, you're growing so fast," she remarked. "Do you still fit in that jacket? You wore it last year, as I recall." "It still fits," Emma murmured. "That's excellent then. Realistic." Margaret's grin had that razor-sharp edge I was all too familiar with. Not everyone has the money to stay current with fashion. Some folks need to handle their money more carefully. I didn't have to answer when the waiter showed up. Naturally, Margaret chose the priciest products and pretended to purchase wine, which costs $140 per bottle. I placed a little order. Emma requested the least expensive spaghetti meal and water. Only water. Trevor grinned. "Not even a Coke." Emma responded, "Water's fine." Margaret responded, "Trevor, don't tease your cousin." But her tone betrayed that she thought it was funny. Not everyone has the same opportunities as you. When the dinner came, there was a blissful stillness for a few minutes, interrupted only by the sound of silverware clinking on pricey china. David then began discussing his and Margaret's planned company expansion, a second facility for their boutique consulting firm. He discussed growth trajectories, market penetration, and attracting millennials. He used buzzwords like confetti at a parade, speaking in that business lingo that sounds impressive but conveys very little. David said, reducing his $40 share, "We're looking at a significant expansion. $600,000, really going to put us on the map, get us attention on a regional level, and perhaps even at the national level if all goes according to plan." I remarked in a neutral tone, "That's ambitious." "We have our clientele, our reputation, and our 5-year estimates that demonstrate steady development. All we need is the money." Margaret dismissively waved her hand as the light caught on her diamond tennis bracelet. "Our loan application is now being processed by the bank. Any day now should see its approval. They would be foolish to pass up this chance. We have a flawless business plan." Trevor reclined in his seat. "I'm allowed to oversee the new site by Dad. Before I turn 25, I'll be earning 6 figures. I responded, "That's fantastic." "Once again, what do you do?" Madison posed the question as if she was unaware. For the previous 3 years, we had experienced this at every family get-together. I answered, I work at First National Bank. Like a teller, she said, as in like a janitor. That kind of stuff. Margaret leaped in, and I anticipated what would happen. Throughout my adult life, I had heard variants of this speech. I've been wanting to discuss this with you, Sarah. I don't want to go too far, but I feel obligated to provide you some advice as your elder sister. I remained silent. Emma's hand had returned to her jacket. The issue is, and I say this with love, you should consider the example you're giving Emma. Children imitate the actions of their parents. They learn to settle if they see others doing so. Instead, kids learn about ambition and achievement. I see. Look at Trevor and Madison, I remarked. They grew up seeing David and myself create something genuine. They know what it takes to be successful. They don't hesitate to aim higher. She sipped from her pricey wine. However, some children just learn various lessons for no fault of their own. They see constraints rather than opportunities. David gave a nod in agreement. It has to do with mentality. Success generates more success. Unfortunately, poverty often leads to further poor. It's only data. Emma's cheeks had flushed not with rage but with guilt. The expression on my daughter's face, the realization that a parent is unable to shield a kid from abuse, seared in my chest. Margaret looked straight at Emma and remarked, Some kids just stay poor like their parents. Nobody is to blame. It's simply the way things are. To be honest, most individuals just lack the enormous effort necessary to break that loop. Trevor chuckled. Mom, it's harsh, but true. Madison was looking through her phone. Brittany just shared photos of her new residence, which is fantastic. Gorgeous. Having parents who help you succeed must be pleasant. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I had anticipated it. The timing was impeccable. I took it out, looked at the screen, and grinned a little. Something amusing, Margaret inquired. I said, just an email. Sunday is work-related. This is what I mean, Emma. It's likely that your mother is working on her day off without even receiving overtime. That is the lower-level positions treadmill. Constantly working yet never succeeding. I placed my phone on the table with the screen visible but hidden. In fact, Margaret, you brought up your loan application while discussing employment. Yes, it ought to be accepted this week. Why? Through which bank did you submit your application? First National, David replied. Their commercial rates are the best in the region. For our initial site, we also went through them. However, this debt is far larger. $600,000 is a significant amount. I said it again, First National. That's handy. Why? I work there, so Margaret's eyes narrowed a little. I picked up my glass of water and took a leisurely drink, just as you said. This week, I actually saw your application come across my desk. Hello, desk. Trevor chuckled. You work as a teller. Loan applications are not visible to tellers. I answered quietly. I used to be a teller for about 6 months when I first started. After that, I worked in customer service, loan processing, and assistant management. There was silence at the table. I received a promotion to regional commercial loan manager on Monday. In my area, I am in charge of all company loan applications above $500,000. Margaret caught my attention, including yours. David's face became pale. You're kidding. I'm not. Do you want me to bring it up? I have the app on my phone. I grabbed my phone. 3 weeks ago, D. Winters Consulting Group submitted an application seeking $600,000 for commercial growth. It's undergoing preliminary evaluation right now. Margaret's lips moved back and forth. You never mentioned being promoted. You never inquired about my real employment. You made an assumption. That is not the same. I browsed through my phone because I liked the theatrical aspect of it, not because I had to. Do you know what makes loan applications intriguing? They need financial responsibility evaluations, work histories, and character references. David blurted out, We have excellent credit. Yes, you do. There is no doubt about it. I put my phone down once again. However, we also consider something else. Public conduct and social media presence. When you entrust someone with $600,000, you want to know about their character, morals, and how they treat others. Trevor was no longer grinning. For years, I have been recording these family get-togethers. I spoke flawlessly, even if it wasn't in secret, just notes, dates, quotations, and witnesses. Emma could benefit from processing the bullying, according to her therapist. For example, lunch today. You told a 13-year-old girl that she would remain impoverished like her parents, according to many witnesses. It's quite a statement to make in public. Margaret began, "That's not what I meant. That's just what you stated. If you'd like, I may ask the waiter to confirm." I looked around the eatery. You were probably heard by a dozen individuals in this room. Some are now staring at us. To be honest, they didn't appear to like it at all. There was a long period of stillness. Emma's eyes were wide as she gazed at me. "Now about your loan," I said. A cursory assessment revealed certain issues. "It has to do with risk assessment, not your sound financials. We must think about what would happen if a commercial relationship went south." "There won't be any issues if there is a lawsuit or public relations issues," David firmly said. "I'm glad to hear that. However, we also consider judgment and decision-making. A person who openly humiliates family members, especially a youngster, in a restaurant, for example, demonstrates a lack of judgment and poor impulse control. These are warning signs in a business associate." Margaret's hands were trembling a little. "Our loan cannot be refused due to a personal dispute. For reasons related to risk assessment, I am able to reject it. This morning, your application was marked for further consideration. This prolongs the procedure by 6 to 8 weeks, or longer if new issues come up." I sipped water once more. "You could, of course, file an appeal." Going to my supervisor, who also concurs with my evaluation, would be necessary for that. On Friday, we had a lengthy discussion about your application. Trevor responded, "This is not professional. It is unprofessional to insult someone without first understanding who they are." I looked over at him. "Because your mother couldn't contain her malice for just one dinner, her debt is in danger. I don't have that issue. She owns that." Madison had become pale. "Mom, we have signed the lease for the new site based on the loan approval you anticipated." "That's another red flag for decision-making," I remarked. "Spending funds that you do not now possess. The lending committee will want to talk about it." David suddenly got to his feet. "This is absurd. We're heading out. I'll pay for lunch today, of course." I took my wallet out. I now earn enough to pay for it. The pay for a regional manager is really good. They hurried out. Madison and Trevor are following their parents. After seeing them go, I turned to face Emma. Even while her eyes were still wide, something had changed, akin to hope. She muttered, "Mom, is all of it accurate? Every single syllable. In actuality, you are a regional manager." "Yes, I am. It has been a week. I was holding off on bringing it up until the appropriate moment. That was very awesome." She took a breath. I motioned for the check. "You know what's really awesome? Your coat. That jacket is very adorable. You look fantastic in it, and the fact that we got it for about $12 makes it even better." Aunt Margaret responded, "That's smart shopping." Aunt Margaret says a lot of things, most of which are intended to make people feel smaller in order to make herself feel greater. That is a weakness, not a strength. I paid and left a big tip once the waiter delivered the check. Emma put her hand in mine as we left. She questioned, "Will they really not get the loan?" "Most likely not. The risk assessment is valid. They are overextended, basing their growth plans on unconfirmed predicted revenue. That's actually a valid reason to deny the loan." I gripped her hand, but I would have discovered that Margaret only made it easier to discern whether she was kind or nasty. In cozy stillness, we drove home. My phone rang that night. Margaret's name appeared on the screen. I left it in voicemail. David then phoned, followed by Margaret once again. I disregarded them all. David sent me an email the next morning. It was stiff and official, expressing regret for any miscommunication and asking for their application to be reconsidered. I sent it together with my initial evaluation comments to my supervisor. 10 minutes later, she responded. "Refused. There are too many warning signs. Well done." I kept the email a secret from Emma. She didn't have to be aware of every detail. She needed to understand the importance of advocating for oneself. Loud harshness is defeated by the calm dignity. That her mother's work, whatever it was worthwhile. We went thrift store shopping together on Sunday. Emma chose 3 brand new coats, all of which cost less than $20. She proudly wore them. David and Margaret's ambitions to expand did not work out. They were unable to pay the new location's rent without the loan. They were having trouble maintaining even the first location's profitability when I last heard. I refrained from gloating. I didn't have to. Being undervalued, and then demonstrating your true self when it counts may sometimes be the finest kind of retaliation.